Hey everyone, it's Trish here, and today I have a holiday themed card featuring all Neat and Tangled products. So to start out with my card, I am using the Neat and Tangled Flower Medallion Builder stamp set, and I have had the stamp set for a while, but trying to come up with a way to use it, and this time I got an idea and I ran with it, thus having a holiday themed card in September. So I am starting out with this solid stamp, which reminds me of a leaf, and I'm stamping that with Lawn Fawn freshly cut grass. Now I have an idea of how I want to create this pattern on my card base, but I didn't really use any pencil lines as a guide. I'm just freehanding it, and luckily it pretty much stayed the same all the way across the card base, and I didn't have any major offsetting of the stamps. So I am just stamping this leaf pattern, and I am rotating it 180 degrees every time. And then once I've done that, I'm going to go on and move to the Lawn Fawn Noble Fur ink, and I'm going to go ahead and use the layer that goes above the leaf and stamp that on top. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to another element from the stamp set, which reminds me of some holly berries, and I'm going to be stamping those in lobster as well as cranberry in the Lawn Fawn inks. And excuse my head getting in the way, but I just wanted to make sure that I was lining them up as best as I could. So I'm taking this other element and I'm going and stamping that in between the leaves with some Lawn Fawn lobster ink, as I mentioned. And I'm going to rotate them on the bottom portion of my card, again, just to change it up a little bit. And to make sure that I covered all of the front of the card, I applied some Post-it tape onto the top end of my card where my crease was. That way I didn't have any ink transferring onto the back side of my card. Now this cardstock is a heavyweight cardstock because I knew that I wanted to make this the base of my card. So it is a heavyweight cardstock, and that's why I'm applying that Post-it tape to make sure that I don't have any ink transferring onto the back portion of my card base. I'm now going in with the layer over those berries in the Lawn Fawn Cranberry ink, and again, I'm just going with it. So, excuse my head, but there is a stamp in the Flower Medallion Builder stamp set that has 3 dots, and I actually did a little bit of stamp surgery and cut out the smallest dot, and I'm using that and stamping that with Versamark ink because I wanted to apply a little bit more interest to this pattern on my card, and I wanted to use some gold embossing powder. Now this is the Ranger Superfine Detail Gold Embossing Powder, and I went ahead and stamped that, and then I heat set it, and I realized that I wanted a little bit more gold interest. So I'm taking my Versamark marker, and I'm applying 3 dots in between each of the leaves, and again applying gold embossing powder and heat setting it. Now I did get a little extra ink somewhere where I didn't want it, so I just used the Mono sander and cleared that off, and then just used an eraser and kind of buffed out the cardstock a little bit. And so here is my card base, which I absolutely love how it turned out. Now the gold dots weren't perfect, but we're just going to go with it. I'm now taking the My Favorite Things Stitched Basic Edge die, and I love how this one die will provide stitching on both pieces that are cut out. And so I went with this design, and then I decided that I wanted to use the Neat and Tangled Very Merry stamp set, and I'm using the sentiment that says Eat, Drink, and Be, and I was going to use the stamp that said Be Merry, from that same exact set, but it was a little bit too large, so I'm using the Neat and Tangled Merry and Bright die, and I'm just going to be using the Merry word, and I really love the script of that. Now to create my die cut, you'll see it's the same gold embossing powder that I'm using both for the sentiment as well as the dots. So what I did was I went ahead and die cut the word Merry, and then I smushed it in my Versamark ink pad and applied the gold embossing powder on it and heat set it so that everything matches and coordinates perfectly. I was considering using some gold glitter cardstock, but I decided to keep everything cohesive. I would just go ahead and make my own gold embellishment. So here I've already stamped my sentiment with Versamark and applied the gold embossing powder, and I was just cleaning it up, some of the extra powder with a dry paintbrush that I use only for embossing powder. And then I am applying some 3M dimensional foam tape on the back of this panel, and I'm kind of playing around with the design to see exactly how I want it to be laid out. And I'm removing the backing on my foam tape and going ahead and flipping my card upside down just so I make sure that the layer matches perfectly with the card base and there isn't a big gap. Now I'm using some multimedia matte adhesive from Ranger, and I'm just using this little brush wand and putting it on the back of the sentiment because it is so intricate. It's kind of hard to use the tip that comes with the multimedia matte adhesive. And then I'm applying my die cut right onto the card exactly where I'd like it with some tweezers to make sure I get a precise placement. And then I'm just putting a clear dry block on top of it so that it can dry and set in place. Next, I'm moving on to my envelope, and I'm using the same exact stamps and layout that I did on my card base, but I'm first applying some Lawn Fawn Yeti ink, and that's because I want the colors to pop since this is craft colored envelope. And once I've stamped it in the Yeti ink, I'm going and heat setting it a little bit, and then I'm going to go in and stamp all of the colors on top of the white layer, just as I did on my card base. Now, the white pigment ink was still a little bit tacky, so you'll see that on my ink pad here, but I wasn't really worried about it. It was still giving me the colors that I would like, and this will seep into the envelope a little bit more and soften so it won't be as bright, but it still made the colors pop a little bit more than it would have if I was just simply stamping onto the envelope. So here is my completed card and envelope. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I absolutely loved making this holiday card. As always, you can find a link to my blog down in the description box down below, which will have a list of all the supplies used on this card, as well as a few additional photos of my project. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you back here soon for another project.